Thank you for joining us for this week's ministry forecast. You know, I've had the privilege of bringing to you many different ministries around the community, around the area. Today, I have Vince Modesto. He is the youth director here at our church, and we just recently finished up a youth camp. And so we're going to be talking about that today. So this is, usually it's ministries outside of just Crossfire, but including Crossfire. Today, this will be talking about the youth camp that just recently happened. And then, you know, letting youth and adults know where their young people can get involved, you know, be involved in ministry. And so I want to encourage you to listen to this time, see what God is doing among the young people at Camp Christian, here at Crossfire Ministries, and throughout our community. So, Vince, tell us a little bit about what Impact was this year, what the theme was, and we'll talk. I'll share a little bit of how Impact started 25 years ago.
Well, Impact is our youth summer camp, and basically what it is, it's 5 days from Monday through Friday of just nonstop events, nonstop going, having fun with youth, but also giving them an opportunity to have an encounter with Jesus. This year's theme was Beyond. It was something that God gave me probably about 6 months back, and it was just where I believe the Lord was imparting into me the need for young people to step out of their comfort zone, to step out of what they're used to step out of the everyday routine life, and to go beyond. I was raised in a ministry that told me that I was called to be something more, that I wasn't meant to just go with the norm. And having that spoken into my life, it really did change me, and it helped me to become the man that I am today. It helped me to realize that I was called for more than just the everyday routine life. And having been the youth pastor now for about 2 years, I look out at some of these young people, and you see them easily get caught up into the routine everyday life, and you see them just kind of so focused on the monotony of life that they don't even realize that they're called for more. They don't even realize their potential. Trials and different things happen in their lives, and they get so stuck.
It seems like that, you know, we are in a culture where you would think that youth are being told that they can do more and be more, but really it's a facade, and they're really being told to just deal with status quo, accept status quo. If my Facebook post looks like I'm doing good, I'm doing good. It's more about how to build a facade than to really enjoy the life that God has given us and find purpose in the life that God has given us.
You know, the sad thing that I've realized, especially in recent months, is you have the culture saying two different things. You have one aspect of it is do whatever you want. If it doesn't make you happy, don't do it. You know, you only live once kind of mentality. But then I've also begun to see this other side where, you know, cyberbullying is at an all-time high. When I speak to so many of these young people, they hate themselves. They hate their self-image. They hate how they feel. They're broken. You know, one of the most heartbreaking aspects of this is when I sit down with a young girl and I find out that she's been self-harming, or she's been dealing with anorexia or bulimia just because of her personal image, her self-image, and what she's felt. And then when you find out that it's not just because of media, but even at home in different areas, you know, at school, her closest friends, where the culture around us is beating us down, but yet telling us that we should be happy and be free. And you begin to see the cycle and almost the deception that this world is offering to our young people. And as a minister, as a pastor, as someone who feels called to young people, when you see that and then you take a step back and you say, wait a minute, I see you have the potential to be amazing. You have gifts and talents of art or singing or just your personality is amazing, and you see that they don't see it in themselves. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. You know, I think Facebook plays a big part or those kinds of social media. Not that they're necessarily in themselves inherently evil or bad. And I have my Facebook page, but I was in the doctor's office just this morning, and as I was there, I saw Us magazine, and on the front cover they put all these wow items to get you to look inside. Why so and so broke up with so and so, and all the drama, all the stuff, and it dawned on me that we've made the cover of People and Us and the tabloids we've made the cover. Our young people have the opportunity to make the cover. All they have to do is say something so ridiculous or do something so crazy or to get attention, threaten to kill themselves or that they're a horrible person. And then people play into that too. We've made the cover of these tabloid magazines, and we make it, and our young people have learned to make it by sometimes crying out where they're not going to get the answers they need. And so it's a dangerous kind of situation, truthfully.
Yeah, honestly, being in ministry at times, you'll have the rebel, you'll have the one that stands out, you'll have the one that doesn't go with the flow and wants to buck and kick at times. But one thing that I've realized is even those ones that are the most difficult and to handle, the ones that try and stand out and be the most dramatic, are often the ones that are hurting the most.
Right.
They're often the ones that are broken the most. And I've realized for myself that one of the most impactful, one of the most dynamic things you could do in a young person's life is to tell them, I'm looking beyond that and I love you anyways. I see beyond your failures. I see beyond your rebellious attitudes. I see beyond your rudeness and your disrespect. And I see someone who's hurting, and I love you, and I'm here for you. And one of the biggest impacts I've realized that we can make, even as a society, is to stop looking at the young people as just this rebellious, crazy society, but to see a lot of hurting and broken people. And that's what it comes back to with Impact. With Impact, we spend the whole week, we have people that are there 24/7 as camp counselors, as even cooks, any person that volunteers at Impact, they do it because they have a heart for young people. They do it because they don't just want a paycheck or something. They do it because they want to see the lives of young people changed forever. And so all throughout this week, one of the most amazing things for me was looking and seeing different volunteers, some of them that aren't even counselors or don't even speak, but the cooks or the maintenance guy stopping and talking to a young person and speaking life into them. That's one of the most amazing things for me, to see the heart of so many people that just want to see this next generation realize its full potential, realize how God sees them, realize that they're called for more.
And I think you're right, Vince. It's definitely that they're called for more, and that God is trying to reach this generation, and it is a difficult generation. It's been almost, I would have to look to know exactly, but somewhere in there 25 years that we started Impact Summer Camp. And I actually started it with a guy named Brad Phillips, and he had started these summer camps down in Cottage Grove, and him and I began to do them together, did them for a couple years, 2-3 years together. He moved out of ministry, and I continued to do the camps out in Coburg. And so we had the big tent, and we would gut the church and gut my house, turn it into the girls' dorm. We'd go out for the guys, and we'd build these little shelters for the guys to sleep outside. And it got to where we were having a couple 200 to 300 kids. And we had no facilities to speak of. We showered them every day by taking them to the Sheldon Pool, and we'd bus them to Sheldon Pool, did an activity every day, every night, worked our tails off to do it. But, when I look back between the summer and the winter camps, many of our directors, our pastors, our ministry leaders, they actually came to Christ during those summer camps. And we'd say, well, yeah, they were discipled at Masters, but many of them actually came to Christ. They wouldn't even have an opportunity to go through our school of ministry. You know, they first have to be reached, and Impact did that, and the youth ministry got them to a place where they were ready to commit their lives. And I know that in my life, it took some radical changes. It took something to shake me, and then a place for me to go once I was shaken. It's not enough that life throws you some difficult things. Now what are you going to do with it, you know? And the church and the youth ministry have to be there. I think that at times camp is such a great time for kids to come to, you know, the Lord, but then there's got to be a infrastructure of ministry that allows that to continue, and it allows them a place to go and people who care. And I think that's the best part of the youth summer camp, isn't that we just do a summer camp. There's a lot of summer camps, a lot of people, but God moves. That's not at every summer camp. God really has the opportunity to move in the lives of the young people. They are able to create relationships and friendships, not only with the other young people, but with the staff that you're talking about, with the, you know, the volunteers. This is a labor of love. This is not something I'm doing, I'm getting paid for. These are people who take off work and make a commitment to be able to speak into the lives of the young people. And then it's followed up with, they have ministry all year long. And I want to encourage you to understand that, you know, there's times your kid wants to go to youth church, and depending on where you go, yes, sometimes youth ministry is simply a fellowship time, games, and it's maybe even counterproductive at times. But find out where you're plugged in church. Find out what is happening in the youth ministry. Go. Ask if you can just show up and sit in the back. Yeah, it might, you know, mortify your student, but you need to know what they're being taught. You need to know that they're being taught, because the school system has an agenda and they're teaching something. The church must have an agenda and be countering that with the truth. You can't just be confronted with lies, and not expect people to be deceived. They've got to have that truth. And so really what happened at camp, and we're going to go through the days of camp here in just a minute, but it has to be also followed up with solid ministry, week in, week out, people who genuinely care, because honestly, these are students growing up, learning to think for themselves, learning to make decisions for themselves. And if they don't have the gospel truth as a piece of their puzzle, they'll find and build their life and system of belief and way of thinking without God. And that's what the enemy wants.
You know what I love so much about this is it's not just me as the youth pastor doing this, but there's a team of volunteers and ministers that have a heart to reach the young people. And probably the coolest thing that I've experienced in the last couple of days is when one of the youth that went to Impact and that gave their heart to God had a family issue at home and didn't know how to deal with it, and one of the volunteers went and helped her out. You know, one of they went and were there for her and helped her through the situation. You know, I love that Impact is it's a great outreach. It's a great time to get away and have fun and have encounters with God. But what I love more is that every week, every Tuesday at our South Eugene campus, every Wednesday at our Springfield campus, it's still going. Our heart is not just to speak to them and then we'll see you later, but it's to actually do life with them and teach them how to go through everything.
And that's here at Crossfire World Outreach Ministries, or Crossfire Family Christian Fellowship, both Springfield and Eugene. A lot of people watching this, you're from another church, and what we're not trying to do is, you know, get you to go to this church, but to see that there are lots of good quality ministries in our community. This Crossfire being one, for 25 years, reaching, actually over that now, reaching out to young people, caring about young people, making them a priority. There are other churches doing that. I encourage you that if you're going to a church, if you're your grandkids are in a church or your children are in a church and you're going to church and you're an adult, know what's going on. Don't let it just be games, because they grow up thinking, oh, it's just a bunch of games. That's what church is a bunch of games and a bunch of fellowship. Well, fellowship is around God's word. Fellowship is getting in and dealing with the things that need to be dealt with that bring forth good fruit. And so, and if you're a young person, you may be a young person going, I'm watching this and I don't really go to church. I'm not involved anywhere. Or I go to church on Sunday, but I'm not really involved in the youth ministry. I want to tell you, not only get involved for yourself, but get involved for your peers. A lot of people thought, well, I don't have to go to church to be a Christian. You don't have to. But if you're a Christian, wouldn't you want to go somewhere where you can impact other people? And are you humble enough to let people impact your life? Yes, there's lots of hurt. There's lots of pain. There's lots of things that happen that aren't the way God wants it in church. That's what it is to go to the store every day. I mean, no matter where I go, that happens. So I want to encourage you to get plugged into a church if you're an adult. If you're a young person, don't just get plugged into a church, get plugged into the youth ministry. If you're an adult, don't just go to church, get plugged into small groups and ministry groups and activity groups. So you begin to build relationship with people. And yes, you have the potential for being hurt, let down, disappointed. That's going to happen. But I want to say that when that happens, there's also good people, caring people, loving people, and you can build strong relationships and get through difficult times, which is so important. So tell us what happened in this camp, Vince. Tell us, Monday we get there. Well, Monday you were there preparing and getting ready. I picked up the speakers up in Portland that came in from Fresno, and their luggage was lost and their plane was late. And so I spent the night in Portland, but I got back Monday afternoon and then I was there Monday night. But could you tell us a little bit about the kids registering and Monday they registered, we got to eat. We had our first service. You spoke that service. Tell us a little bit about what that was on Monday.
This week in general was a very different camp than I've ever experienced before, and it did start on Monday. Normally we have a lot of teens coming from different walks of life, from different churches. Maybe some of them don't even go to church or don't have a relationship with Jesus, and so usually Monday it's a little bit of an adjustment process where they come in after registration, after eating dinner, and we have our worship service and we have our preaching.
And their eyes are this big around because some of them never been to church.
Exactly, and they're a little standoffish. They don't know anyone. It's that first day of school feeling of the awkward. I don't know, I don't know if I'm going to be picked on or anything. And so you see that type of apprehension. What was so cool this year was that didn't happen. Yeah. There were a lot of, even the newcomers, the ones that didn't know anyone, there was such a welcoming, friendly atmosphere that everyone was instantly making friends. When the worship started, it wasn't standoffish, but there were people that were genuinely engaging, young people that you can tell were hungry to hear something, that were hungry for God. And as I spoke, there was just this feeling, I spoke on Gideon, and the idea of when the angel of the Lord says, the Lord is with you, mighty warrior, and how Gideon was far from a mighty warrior at the time. He was the lowest of his clan, and his clan was the lowest of the people, and how it doesn't matter where we're at, but when God speaks, he's speaking to where we could be and what his plan is for our life. And the coolest thing for me was just seeing something wake up in some of these young people where they started to realize it doesn't matter where I'm at. It doesn't matter what I've done. It doesn't matter what's happened. God has something more for me. And even the first night, you could see mindsets beginning to change. And you could see that there were young people that were broken, that came in really broken. We'll talk more about the camp testimonies in a little bit, but one of the cool things is when you find out where they came from and what they were walking from, and you just realize, wow, God, you did something so amazing. And even that first night, the service was just, God was setting the tone for the entire week, and it was very, very cool. Afterwards, we did a scavenger hunt where we like to encourage friendships and building relationships and things, and so we do a scavenger hunt, which always pulls people out of their comfort zone. And what was so cool was by the end of the night, you see kids that used to be standing off in the corner just completely letting go of all their apprehensions and just finally making friends and becoming who they are. And it was a great first night. It was really, really great.
So that was Monday night. And then Tuesday morning, they woke up and they had a day there at the camp.
Yes.
And so can you tell us a little bit about what happened during that day? You had some morning speakers, that kind of a thing.
We have a camp director. Her name's Ariel Siufua. She's our children's pastor for Crossfire. And I felt that it was very necessary that she spoke also because she has such a heart for these youth. I mean, the camp wouldn't have gone on to the capacity that it did if it weren't for her. And so I felt it was very necessary for them to hear her heart. And as she spoke, she basically just spoke on Nehemiah looking beyond the fact that his people were scattered, but saying, I'm going to do something about it. I'm not going to just sit in my emotions, but I'm going to do something about it. And you could just see that people were becoming encouraged to do something about their broken families, about their schools, all these different things.
Somebody has to arise and say, there's going to be a difference.
Exactly.
And I've said this many times here recently, but who's going to win this city to Christ if it isn't the church? And when I say the church, I don't mean a in particular church, but the body of Christ arising and doing it and coming together, which is what church should be. And somebody's got to say, hey, we can't just let everyone be lost.
One of the biggest challenges that I feel, not just in the youth, but in general, that we face is it's so easy. I remember before I became a pastor, and I was discipled underneath, another pastor, and it's so easy to think, they'll do it. They'll take care of it. They'll be, well, someone should do it. Okay, well, that's what the leaders are for. But something changed where I began to realize they're only one person. Not only that, but I'm called to make a difference myself.
And Ephesians makes it clear that the only difference between the leader and everyone else is that leader's part of everyone else. And we're all called to do the job.
Together.
The leader is meant to train us to all do the job. So he has to be trained and he trains others. It's discipleship 101. The ministry, the pastor isn't to win everyone to Christ. He's not the discipler. He's not the one that does all the great works. He's supposed to train us how to do it. And then once we know, we've got to do it.
Exactly. I also do believe that one of the ways that we can help people to do is by giving them practical ways of living life and actually going out and being the change. And so one of the things that we do for this camp is we have breakouts where we speak on going beyond, and we speak on the theme, but in different ways, beyond in our calling, beyond in worship, beyond in our everyday life. I mean, we have people that spoke on beyond in spite of tragedy, and we try our best to speak to everyday life situations, because the truth is they're going to be submerged for 5 days in a Christian camp, but then they got to go back to real life.
Right.
And so we want to give them something that they can take back and remember when they're going through the everyday life things, when they're struggling in the world, when they're struggling with family issues.
We only have a few more minutes. Can you tell us some of the people who spoke during the camp?
Yeah, we have our pastors from Crossfire, Pastor Christy Taylor, your wife, I'm sure you know her. Pastor Jonathan Farger and his wife Kelly Farger. We had Ariel Siufua also, and Pastor Chris Cheek. They all spoke and they did different breakouts. And then our main speaker, it's kind of special to me. He's my old worship pastor from back in Fresno, Frank Garcia and his wife Patricia Garcia. And I just felt we had him back from BTI. At BTI, God did some amazing things. And I felt like God started something there and he wanted to continue it here. And so we had them back, and what was great was he doesn't drum it up, he doesn't beat around the bush, and he just spoke on the concept of God calling Peter out of the boat and stepping beyond. And what was amazing was you saw these young people realizing, okay, I'm tired of my old life. I'm tired of doing the same thing. I'm tired of the craziness of doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, you know? And you saw them change. You saw them step out. You saw teens stepping out in worship, stepping out and talking about God in such amazing ways that by the end of it, you know, there were teens that were passionately pursuing God, not because we were making them, but because they wanted God, because they desired God. I saw teens that even when there weren't services going on, praying for one another, you know, and encouraging one another to keep going. This was just an amazing week, and what Pastor Frank brought out was just the reality that this is serious. It's not a game. It's not the question of, you know, is Jesus my thing? You know, Christianity isn't a political party. It's life. It's the reality that there's a living God that desires to know us, that desires to encounter us, and desires for us to walk with him. And I believe that the youth realize that this week, you know.
At the end, there was some testimonies. Tell us about that, and then we're gonna have to let these people go on to the next show.
Yeah.
So,
well, the testimonies within the next week will be up on our website. So if you guys want to see them,
how can they go to that?
They can go to mycrossfire.com/impact, and all the testimonies will be up there. It's obviously going to be anonymous because the reality is some of these testimonies are pretty tragic. You know, I remember, you know, one of the best things that we experienced was after the craziness of the camp, after the teens are gone and we finally get some rest, we go through these testimonies, and I began to weep. Because I realized that there were so many of these young people that are just coming from broken families, broken homes, broken lives, hurting and lost. I mean, truly lost. And they found their hope. They found their peace, you know?
That's what it's all about, isn't it? Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching today. Thank you for being a part of the ministry forecast. We've got new things that we try to bring out. The summer's difficult. We do run some reruns, but throughout the year, we'll have new ministries. If you're pastor, worship leader, you know, someone in your church, somebody's got a specific testimony, would like to be a part of this show, simply call us or write us at the address here at the end, or you can give me a call at Crossfire Ministries at 541-686-5433. Thank you for being with us.